afternoon, a very warm welcome to World Konnect this week. This, of course, is the show that is your weekly window to the world. And let's set the ball rolling with the focus of the show. I'm Sakal Bhatt. Turkish President Tayyip Erdogan in Istanbul announces the end of the coup, affirms government is in firm control. Dozens of people killed and more than 300 detained in a night of violence across Turkey on Friday. Truck driver named as France mourns 84 killed on Bastille Day. 24 hours after a Bastille Day celebration was transformed into a nightmare, world condemns the horrific Nice attack. Britain sees a change of guard. May is Britain's second female head of government after Margaret Thatcher. David Cameron stepped down after Britons rejected his entreaties and voted to leave the EU in a referendum. 3.5 million kilometers square area of marginal sea adjoining Pacific Ocean becomes seat of global contention. Ruling of International Court for Arbitration on the South China Sea stirs up the waters between Beijing and Manila. And first opera in Arabic language performed in Lebanon. Antar and Abla showcases the tale of ancient Arabia in the Western classical genre. In Turkey, President Tayyip Erdogan announced the end of a military coup and said the government is in control. Addressing a crowd in Istanbul early on Saturday after a night of violence in the country following an attempt from the military to overpower the government, Erdogan termed it as an act of treason and said the army must be cleansed. He was surrounded by his supporters. The Turkish Prime Minister Binali Yildirim also said the situation was largely under control. Meanwhile, dozens of people were killed and more than 300 detained in a night of violence across Turkey on Friday. The clashes were sparked when elements in the military staged an attempted coup. The majority of those killed were civilians and most of those detained are soldiers. And now moving on to the horrific attack in Nice. Even as the French were recovering from the horrific terror attacks in Paris last November, a truck driver in the city of Nice mauled into the crowded Promenade des Angelus, killing more than 80 people, including women and children, on Bastille Day, and scores of others were injured. The police then gunned down the driver of the truck, but not before he had driven for over 2 kilometers through the crowds gathered to watch a fireworks display to mark the country's National Day. Authorities have said they found identity papers belonging to a 31-year-old French-Tunisian citizen, Mohamed Lahouej Bohlal, in the truck. The driver had also fired a gun several times before police shot him dead. An investigation is underway to find if he acted alone or if he had accomplices who might have fled. His apartment in Nice was also searched on Friday. Suspected links with terror outfits are being examined. Latest reports suggest that the 31-year-old was unknown to intelligence services and was never flagged for signs of radicalization. Investigators, however, say the attack was in line with the constant calls to kill which terror groups regularly make. The nature of the attack has shocked people from around the world. Meanwhile, French president was visibly emotional but defiant in his reaction. The UN has also condemned the barbaric and cowardly act and underlined the need to bring the perpetrators to justice. France has now extended its state of emergency and the government has declared 3-day mourning. Britain saw a change of guard this week when Cameron stepped down after Britons rejected his entreaties and voted to leave the EU in a referendum last month. May is Britain's second female head of government after Margaret Thatcher. Theresa May is expected to create a new ministerial post which will be focused exclusively on dealing with Brexit issues. She will also attempt to unite a divided ruling Conservative Party and a fractured nation in which many, on the evidence of the vote, feel angry with the political elite and left behind by the forces of globalization.
Theresa May became Britain's new Prime Minister on July 13, promising to carve out a bold new future in the world, embarking on the monumental task of leading the country out of the European Union. May, 59 years of age, assumed office after an audience with Queen Elizabeth and drove straight to her new home of 10 Downing Street, vacated hours earlier by David Cameron.
Following the referendum, we face a time of great national change. And I know, because we're Great Britain, that we will rise to the challenge. As we leave the European Union, we will forge a bold, new, positive role for ourselves in the world. And we will make Britain a country that works not for a privileged few, but for every one of us.
Theresa May has an uphill
knows this,
task up ahead to deal with. She will try to limit the damage to British trade and investment while renegotiating the country's ties with the 27 EU partners.
But the full title of my party is the Conservative and Unionist Party. And that word unionist is very important to me. It means we believe in the Union, the precious, precious bond between England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland.
Meanwhile, Philip Hammond took the helm of Britain's finance ministry after the new Prime Minister Theresa May appointed the former Foreign Secretary to succeed George Osborne in a government which will take Britain out of the European Union. As finance minister, Hammond will have to manage an economy that risks sliding into recession after last month's vote to leave the EU and set new budget goals.
They've read the entire thing.
Replacing him in the Foreign Office is former London Mayor Boris Johnson in a surprise announcement by Theresa May. Johnson was a leading figure in the victorious Leave campaign in Britain's European Union membership referendum last month and had been considered the front-runner to become Prime Minister himself before being sidelined by moves against him within the ruling Conservative Party.
I will be advocating vote Leave or whatever the team is called. I understand there are many of them. I think that is basically because I want a better deal for the people of this country.
Nevertheless, in the midst of the flurry of shocking reactions over his elevation to the top post as Foreign Minister, Johnson, who has never previously held a cabinet post, will have to address questions about the country's role in the world after its exit from the EU, and he will inherit Britain's often difficult relationship with Russia.
The residents of Wildpolsried village in Germany have set a firm example of travelling an extra mile to make the planet safe to live in for the future generations. Here the villagers produce 5 times more energy than they use. Starting from IT workers to farmers, the people take pride in making their place independent and sustainable. Let's listen in how they actually do it.
Talk of the hour is clean energy. Energy made of renewable resources, energy that does not leave a carbon footprint. The Bavarian villagers have gone an extra mile to ensure that the future of the planet is in safe hands. Without waiting for money from firms or business people, the population of Wildpolsried decided to invest in green energy. Result, they produce 5 times more energy than they use. Starting from IT workers to farmers, the people take pride in making their place independent and sustainable.
When one looks out of the window, you see windmills and a lot of photovoltaic panels on the roofs. And this concept of self-sufficiency inspires us in our idea to help houses be energy independent.
The villagers initially had the advantages of subsidies while shifting over to alternate energy resources, and now they have a profit from the additional energy produced. Moreover, the sense of ownership has made them feel responsible towards bettering their own settlement.
The most important is that the inhabitants who have the infrastructures on their territory also benefit. The involvement of the citizens is probably the most important part of this project. If we had to use investors from the outside, there would not be this link between inhabitants and renewable energies.
Citizen participation in the creation of this energy village has been pivotal. An idyllic town in the countryside, the alternate energy devices of wind turbines, solar panels in this picturesque German village lead the way for the green energy revolution.
Moving on, the Chinese Coast Guard blocked a group of Philippine fishermen from approaching a disputed shoal a few days after an international arbitration ruling allowing the Philippines to fish in its exclusive economic zone. While a Philippine official says the ruling was a historic victory in international law. Meanwhile, an international court in The Hague ruled earlier on July 12 that China has no historic title over the large swaths of South China Sea and that it has breached the sovereign rights of the Philippines with its actions there.
The 3.5 million kilometer square area of marginal sea adjoining Pacific Ocean is now the seat of global contention. The ruling of International Court of Arbitration on the South China Sea on Tuesday has stirred up waters between Beijing and Manila. The case was brought to The Hague by the Philippines in 2013, who alleged that China had violated the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea. The tribunal working under this convention struck down China's claims in the strategic area and said China has violated the Philippines' sovereign rights. The Hague-based court also ruled that China has caused severe harm to the coral reef environment by building artificial islands. The unanimous decision of the panel is binding, but the Permanent Court of Arbitration has no powers of enforcement. Philippines, while welcoming the decision, has urged restraint and sobriety after South China Sea ruling.
The Philippines strongly affirms its respect for this milestone decision as an important contribution to ongoing efforts in addressing disputes in the South China Sea. The decision upholds international law, particularly the 1982 UNCLOS. The Philippines reiterates its abiding commitment to efforts of pursuing the peaceful resolution and management of disputes with the view of promoting and enhancing peace and stability in the region.
China was quick to condemn the ruling, which comes highly in favor of the Philippines. President Xi Jinping asserted that China's sovereignty over South China Sea will not be affected by the arbitration. He stressed that China is firmly committed to safeguarding peace and stability in the region and to resolving relevant disputes peacefully through direct negotiations with the countries concerned on the basis of respecting historical facts and international law.
China will continue to work with countries in the region to protect regional peace, stability and safety. We hope the countries outside the region can respect the efforts made by the countries in the region, rather than creating or hyping up tension.
China, which had boycotted the hearings at the International Court, released a white paper immediately after the International Court's decision. On Wednesday, Beijing vowed to take all necessary measures to protect its sovereignty in the South China Sea and said it has the right to set up an air defense zone. China called the Philippines' claims of sovereignty in South China Sea baseless and their unilateral initiation of arbitration an act of bad faith. China claims that the sea areas falling within the 9-dash line as its maritime territory. It claims more than 90% of the South China Sea. This area is also claimed in part by Philippines, Vietnam, Malaysia, Brunei and Taiwan.
South Sudan's 5th Independence Day was interspersed with severe violence that has put the country in the brink of a civil war. Forces loyal to President Kiir and long-time rival Vice President Riek Machar fought street battles in the capital for 5 days. A ceasefire deal reached on Monday is in place. The recent violence has raised fears of a collapse of a nearly one-year-old peace deal that was supposed to end 2 years of ethnically charged civil war between Kiir and Machar's supporters. A government estimate puts the figure of those killed in last week's violence as 272. The United Nations, meanwhile, has said that this figure was likely the tip of an iceberg. Meanwhile, foreign nationals were evacuated from the war-torn country from Wednesday onwards. The U.S. White House said it had deployed 47 troops to protect U.S. citizens and the country's embassy. US President Barack Obama has said that more must be done to build trust, that police violence against blacks and Hispanics will be properly investigated. In a high-powered meeting called Post-Dallas Attack, Obama has called for the country to come together and not give in to despair and division after the shooting deaths of 5 police officers in Dallas and the police killings of black men in Louisiana and Minnesota. Later, a White House task force released a report last year recommending various reforms for local law enforcement in the US, but Obama said more action is needed.
The Dallas shootout in the United States, in which 5 police officers were killed, has raised serious questions over racial discrimination in the country. US President Barack Obama, who had to cut short a European tour to visit the Texas city, called on Americans to shed despair and rise above racial divides. The US President attended a memorial service to honor the police officers in a racially motivated attack, even as he admitted that bias remains a persistent national problem.
Perhaps we've heard prejudice in our own heads and felt it in our own hearts. We know that. And while some suffer far more under racism's burden, some feel to a far greater extent discrimination's sting. Although most of us do our best to guard against it and teach our children better, none of us is entirely innocent. No institution is entirely immune. And that includes our police departments. We know this.
In what was the deadliest attack for US law enforcement since 9/11, a US military veteran, Micah Johnson, had fatally shot 5 Dallas police officers last Thursday. The attack was carried out during a protest against police killing of 2 African Americans. The attack was condemned by activists, but with a firm conviction that the root of the problem, namely discrimination, should be quickly eliminated.
While we mourn the brave police officers of Dallas, we must not be derailed from the struggle to end the pattern of black men being executed, Louisiana and Minnesota style. Too much violence, too much fear make all of us less secure.
The deep-rooted bias in the United States has spurred violent actions over the last few years. Now the country faces a difficult task of overcoming one-sided prejudices and creating a more inclusive society.
And now let's take a look once again at the other stories that are gaining attention all across the world.
Let's go.
Dice l'Ecclesiaste c'è un tempo per ogni cosa.
Crisis out there.
While leading reform.
For them, because that's the generation to come.
And she served as an active.
And to instill some democratic values.
In showbuzz, Taylor Swift topped Forbes' annual list of the world's highest paid celebrities with earnings of $170 million in 2016. The one-time country girl, whose crossover appeal now reigns supremely in the world of pop music, crushed it with her 1989 record-breaking North American tour that grossed $200 million. Singer Adele earned the number 9 spot with an yearly income of $80 million.
But it was absolutely incredible.
With 11 Tony Awards and a Pulitzer Prize, Lin-Manuel Miranda bowed out of his hit Broadway show Hamilton last Saturday. Miranda played the lead in the musical for the last time. The audience gave Miranda a 1-minute standing ovation during his first appearance in the opening number. Celebrities including Jennifer Lopez, Jane Fonda and US Secretary of State John Kerry were present on the show. Hamilton, a hip-hop musical with a multi-racial cast about US founding father Alexander Hamilton, who was killed in an 1804 duel with Vice President Aaron Burr. Well, in Globe Culture, we get you the story of what actually goes behind the making of the first opera in Arabic language, the troupe of Antar and Abla. Taking a leaf out of the Italian traditional classical singing, the Antar and Abla was transformed into a beautiful musical theatrical performance true to its origins. Recently, Antar and Abla is their message of peace and love to the world, that too in the middle of the Middle East unrest.
A former slave falls in love with a princess. Obstacles and hurdles in the narrative, intertwined with history, culture and traditions of 6th century Arab, has been immortalized in the famous epic Antar and Abla. The legend of Antar became the first Lebanese opera in Arabic. Taking a leaf out of the Italian traditional classical singing, the Antar and Abla was transformed into a beautiful musical theatrical performance true to its origin.
The story comes from the womb of the Arab region, from Antar, which is one of the strongest Arabic symbols.
One of the challenges in making this project possible was the need to remain faithful to the Arabic pronunciations. As the first opera in the Arabic language, the troupe of Antar and Abla made world-famous Western classical music genre to accommodate the distinct consonants of the Arabic language, all the while projecting one's voice for the performance.
Many people were saying that an opera in Arabic wouldn't work, that the sounds in Arabic couldn't be pronounced. Opera in Arabic is marvelous.
This is the first opera in Arabic with a method that respects the pronunciation and phonetics specific to the Arabic language. That's the important thing about this play. This is a turning point happening in Lebanon.
The 80-member team took up a tough task, but deftly showcased musical scores, expressions, emotions of the age-old Arabia to create unique and ambitious project. In the present circumstances of unrest in the Middle East, the troupe, through its performance, want people to be reminded of the strong traditions and rich history of the region. Antar and Abla is their message of peace and love to the world.
Well, these Jordanian girls have discovered a newfound love, and that too in soccer. They have taken to football and hence they have crushed all stereotypes. They feel sports has an immense power to empower women. These girls will be seen in top competitive gear when they take on under-17 football turf hosted by Jordan itself.
For Jordan, it's a first. The Middle Eastern country is all set to host the FIFA Under-17 Women's World Cup for the first time. For Leen, it's her first World Cup as the 14-year-old takes part in the game, representing a country which had once looked down at girls in sports.
Here in Jordan, girls only began playing football recently. For some people, it is frowned on for a girl to go play in the street. There are no girls in the streets. I was the only one.
The girls wearing headscarves take to the field, defying social conventions in the conservative country. They leave no stone unturned as they briskly practice for the upcoming World Cup, in what would be a dream come true for the teenagers. Training under the British coach Robbie Johnson, the team hopes to make a mark in the international women's football competition.
Obviously, it's not as advanced as in Europe and the Americas and some of the African nations, but this particular group are certainly keen to make a mark and certainly put the Middle East on the map.
The girls strive to make a bigger statement in the country and break stereotypes concerning women. With women gaining more visibility through international sports, authorities believe that this will create a positive social impact.
creating role models that inspire will definitely create some sort of change. There are many barriers that prevent or limit the participation of women in sports, whether social or otherwise, but it's every little step towards creating that change and making a difference.
Sports in Jordan empowers and makes these young girls confident and prepared to take on new roles in the society.
And this brings us to the end of this edition of World Konnect. Do send us your feedbacks. You can write to us. Our email ID is worldkonnect.ddnews@gmail.com. You can also follow us on Facebook. Thank you very much for tuning in. Before we leave you with the glimpses of the Nadam Festival of traditional Mongolian sports featuring archery, horse racing and wrestling, all from Ulaanbaatar. Have a look. Have a great weekend. Namaskar.
We're going in.